Hey, everybody. How's it going? I am back in the studio. Thank goodness, after a very, very long couple of days all over the United States for the kickoff to my book tour. It looks like we're having some weird issues on YouTube, so I sincerely apologize for whatever the heck is going on over there. We'll make sure you guys are all watching in the right place. I sincerely apologize. OBS has been like super wonky about everything today, but it's good to be back in studio and back with all of our normal setup, and most importantly, back with my sweet pupper. Libbo, do you have anything to say today? No? Nothing? You're just happy I'm home. She has been the most Velcro dog of all time today because I am back from my book tour for 48 hours, a very short stint to repack my suitcase, get everything done. It is very exciting to be home. I have date night tonight. We're going to see Hamilton, which I'm super excited about. I've never seen it on stage, so that should be really fun. And then back out on the road next week. I mentioned a little bit already about what we're doing for the book tour next week, but in case you guys missed that yesterday on our stream, I am headed back to the beautiful state of Colorado, my home state where I grew up. Early next week, I'm going to be speaking to the Colorado Federation of Young Republicans on Monday and Colorado State University's chapter of TPUSA on Tuesday night. Then we're headed up to Washington State on Wednesday, and I will be speaking up at the University of Washington in Seattle. Hopefully there's not too crazy of protests going on up at Washington. And then we're headed to Auburn University next Thursday, and then I come home for a couple more days after that. So if you guys are going to be in the area, would love to see you come to one of our events. I'll make sure to continue posting all of the details for those things when we are literally en route to all of these places, so don't you worry. Today, though, we're home, and it's good because we have a lot to talk about in terms of this insanely viral new documentary series called Quiet on Set, exposing all of the insanity from Nickelodeon during our childhood with shows like Drake and Josh and iCarly and Victorious. These wonderful shows that we loved watching growing up were not always the most rosy picture, unfortunately, behind the scenes. And I don't know if you guys have had a chance to watch this new series that I think is streaming on HBO Max and Amazon Prime. I watched it on Max yesterday on the plane and binge watched the entire thing very, very quickly. Your childhood might be a little bit shattered by today's stream, but I think it's important that we watch because otherwise we'll have no idea just how deep this problem goes in Hollywood in terms of the overt exploitation of children. So today we're going to be reacting to some of the clips going really viral from this documentary series and what I'm understanding to be a deeper level of more covert grooming and innuendo that was happening at Nickelodeon around the same time. We're going to be covering all of that. Before we do that, though, since we're actually live and I'm in studio, I'm really excited to say hi to a few people in the stream. So if you guys are new, especially, let us know who you are and where you're watching from. And as you guys are saying hello in our chat, make sure that you're hitting the like button on this episode. That could look like a little thumbs up or a little heart button. I'm ramped up on caffeine right now on like my 8th cup of coffee because I've gotten 2 hours of sleep the last several nights. So bear with me if our energy levels seem a little bit high. And most importantly, smash that follow or subscribe button no matter where you guys are watching to help us continue growing the channels one person at a time. YouTube, you guys have been slaying the game the last 48 hours or so. We've had a couple videos go really, really viral and gaining a ton of subs today. So very grateful for you guys. Let's start over on Instagram today. We've got Pete watching in Australia. We've got Elle watching in Minneapolis. Jade is watching from Miami, probably very close to where I live. Very, very cool. Shawnee's watching in Utah. Heart of the Lion is in Nashville. We've got Los Angeles, Florida, Indiana, Arizona, Manitoba, Canada, Argentina. So very cool. Hello, Emmanuel. Nice to meet you. Albuquerque, more Florida, the Netherlands. My sister is in Amsterdam this weekend for the first time. She's studying abroad in Europe this semester, and I'm so jealous of her trip to Amsterdam. It looks so freaking fun. Washington, California, Maine, Kuwait. Very cool. Utah, Nebraska, Cincinnati, Seattle, Arkansas, all over the freaking place. So glad you guys are here. I love you all so very much. Let's jump over to Rumble. We've got Hottie 3G, John Best, and Old Man Trucker kicking things off for us in the chat. Nitty Witty is over on Getter, which we love to see. We've got Red 4, African Warlord, Magic Def, Sabina, Crazy Cat Lady, Alex, and more over on Locals. I got to see Alex yesterday in real life at the University of Texas in Austin. I love when you guys get to come to our real life speaking events and I get to meet you guys in person. And finally, over on YouTube, we've got Centuries of Victory, Miguel, Markey, Dutch Canadian, and more. Love you guys so very much. Okay, chat, have you guys already watched this new series, Quiet on Set? I'm dying to know, and I'm trying not to give too many spoilers away. We're not watching the most insane of the clips per se today on the stream, but we are going to be watching some of them. I'm really curious to know if you've already watched it. And if you haven't, you're probably going to want to after we talk about this on the stream today. I had avoided watching it for a few days because I kept thinking I have such great memories of watching so many of these shows. I was always a bit more of a Disney Channel kid than a Nickelodeon kid. And I don't know if that's just because Nickelodeon shows were generally more oriented towards like boy audiences, and Disney Channel shows around the time that I was watching all of them were a little bit more oriented towards girl audiences. For example, like my absolute favorite shows growing up were Lizzie McGuire, and I loved Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. I loved the High School Musical movies. Those were like my peak iconic child television, but I did watch several Nickelodeon shows as well. I loved watching iCarly growing up. Victorious, the first few seasons I loved, and by the time they like finished that show, I was a little bit too old to continue watching child TV. I had kind of moved on at that point, but I had two younger sisters, so I always kind of stayed tangentially aware of what was on TV, but they were much more into the Disney Channel than Nickelodeon. And I remember some of the very first shows that I watched on Nickelodeon being like Zoe 101, Drake and Josh. It was a great era of child entertainment and television, and we loved these shows. They were absolutely hilarious. It was kind of the first time that kids-oriented content was really skyrocketing to A-list mainstream success. And I think as we were watching these shows growing up, it was really cool to be able to be growing up at a time that there were several channels on TV. That's when we actually had channels, believe it or not. If you're watching this thinking, what is that? Yeah, you like actually had to type a number into the remote for your parents' TV. My Disney Channel, I think, was channel 33, and Nickelodeon might have been 31 or 35. It was either two below or two above. You actually had to type the channel in, but like all day, every day for 24 hours, it was child's content. Everything from cartoons to these live actor TV shows that we absolutely loved to original movies. And it really transformed the era of entertainment that we were growing up in. Arguably, I think we would say at the time, for the better as consumers. We had kids-oriented TV shows that were starring kids, meant for kids. And we knew at the time that most of these shows on Nickelodeon were produced by the same guy, and his name was Dan Schneider. He was getting award after award after award for being this revolutionary television producer specifically for children's content. He was a very successful writer on a few different sitcoms before he was hired by Nickelodeon, but it was really Nickelodeon that transformed his career, and he served as one of the head producers, if not the head producer, on all kinds of shows, starting before my time of watching Nickelodeon, when I was too young to be watching Nickelodeon, on stuff like All That or The Amanda Show, which was Amanda Bynes' really big break, beyond All That, which she starred on as well, all the way through Drake and Josh and iCarly and Victorious, and then the spin-off show of those, Sam and Cat, starring Jeanette McCurdy. And he was really this revolutionary figure in the entertainment industry for so many years. But under the radar, and really in Hollywood inside of the network, there was always this beating pulse about a secret, less obvious identity related to Dan Schneider that was incredibly problematic, whether it was overt sexism towards women in the workplace, really problematic and controversial treatment of child actors and actresses, and arguably a lot of abuse that was being covered up behind the scenes, but nobody really knew how to expose that. There were several different employees of Dan's that got fired and even arrested and put in prison during his time as a producer on the network for extremely problematic behavior. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. And so that was really concerning for people. Was he aware of these things when he hired these people? We don't know. It's all very much in speculation. And this all kind of came to a head in the last couple of years because of a memoir written by Jeanette McCurdy, who starred as Samantha Puckett on iCarly. If you remember the girl with the long blonde hair who loved food and was kind of a tomboy and was a really, really fun character, one of the best characters on television for kids entertainment when I was growing up. She wrote a book that was published a couple of years ago called I'm Glad My Mom Died, which the title in and of itself is extremely jarring and I think grabbed a lot of people's attention. And it's now recharting this week as a #1 bestseller in the book world, which I'm paying a lot of attention to with our book charting as a #1 bestseller this week. But she writes about this abuse that she experienced as a child actress in Hollywood, not just from the network and the really problematic behaviors she witnessed from an unnamed person in the book called The Creator, which most people have this consensus is in fact Dan Schneider, but also from her parents and her mom specifically, because it was really her mom's dream to have Jeanette be a child actor. She never had a personal ambition towards any of this, and the abuse that she suffered at the hands of her mom created this really problematic family tension, especially when Jeanette was earning all of their family's income and really supporting their family financially. That is now a very common story for so many of these child actors and actresses inside of Hollywood, and how their parents are exploiting them for their own wealth opportunities, their own financial stability, and maybe even their own tangential fame. If you guys haven't read I'm Glad My Mom Died, it was one of the best books I've read in the last several years. I quite literally could not put it down. I read it in a matter of hours, and there's also an audiobook that Jeanette read herself that's really powerful. You'll immediately recognize her voice if you are a child of the late 90s or early 2000s and you grew up watching iCarly or Sam and Cat on Nickelodeon. And it really created this national conversation about the very questionable practices happening behind the scenes at Nickelodeon several years ago. So when I saw that this documentary, Quiet on Set, was coming out, I knew I wanted to watch it, but having been so shocked and jarred at the contents of I'm Glad My Mom Died, Jeanette McCurdy's book, I was hesitant to watch it right away because I knew inherently it was going to fundamentally transform how I viewed the entertainment industry, and specifically Nickelodeon and the shows that I used to love watching as a child. It's a 4-part documentary series. Each part gets a little bit harder to watch, in my opinion, and it covers largely Dan Schneider, but also several other horrifying individuals that worked at the network with some of our favorite child stars, and really the impact that it had on these people's lives. I think most people are probably familiar at this point, several days into this documentary having been released, that Drake Bell has come forward and for the first time ever publicly shared his experience being sexually abused as a child actor in Hollywood by somebody that he was supposed to trust, his dialogue coach and acting coach that was a producer on several of the shows that he worked on at Nickelodeon. But really, this documentary is about so much more than that as well. It's about the sexism Dan Schneider instituted in the workplace, allegedly, if you want to say that, but arguably has been proven at this point. By his being let go by Nickelodeon as a network. It's about the exploitation of these kids. It's about so much more, and the need for more safeguards and guardrails for children in the entertainment industry who are being disgustingly exploited sexually and otherwise for the entertainment, the financial gain, and wealth opportunities of adults. There's a couple of clips that we pulled from the documentary I really want you to see because I'm so curious to get your guys' take on them. We're going to watch a few of those and then talk, after I watched this documentary, the big picture that started to click and make sense in my brain in a way that never had when I was a child, about more covert and subtle innuendo that I cannot unsee now related to Nickelodeon as a network. So first things first, this video snippet is from a couple of different female employees. Both of these women worked in the writing room with Dan Schneider for a show called All That, which was the first kids stand-up comedy show in the late 90s and early 2000s. And listening to them and the workplace environment that they were expected to work in every day, honestly, is disgusting and really sad, and makes me glad that we are encouraging people to speak up about this type of behavior.
The opportunities for women were fewer. You knew you were going in for the one spot.
This was way back in 1999. There were forums where people would talk about writing, and it was in one of those groups, a television comedy writing group. Dan Schneider was in that group, and he had said that he was working on this new television show for Nickelodeon. So I just took a shot and I asked him if he would read my work. And the story that he told me later was that Dan gave them to his writer's assistant and said, you know, read through these and rate them funniest on top. He was surprised to find that mine was on top, and that's what prompted him to call me. I was actually sitting at my desk at work. One of the producers called me and told me that, you know, congratulations, we're offering you a staff writer position on The Amanda Show. This was like a dream come true.
I had been in LA for 7 years, and so it felt very satisfying that someone was gonna pay me to write comedy. I remember speaking to the line producer, and she said that I was going to have to split a salary with a writer that I did not know.
Which, for the record, was actually against the rules of the union that these women belong to. So when they ended up reporting this to the Writers Guild, they got in huge trouble at Nickelodeon because you weren't allowed to split salaries. That was like fundamentally against the guidelines of Hollywood and the regulations of Hollywood. So these women both get hired and end up having to split a salary for the same job that they should have been paid equally for.
We're getting 2 for the price of 1. They were going to hire 2 women and have them share a salary. And I never saw it happen to any of the men.
I was like, well, I'm excited. I get to stop temping.
This was my dream job. I mean, this is what I wanted. This is why I worked so hard for. I'm not about to turn it down. I thought to myself, don't be a complainer, you know, do whatever you have to do to get this job.
So they end up getting these jobs, both of these women, and they stay at the network for a couple of years. And throughout their time working at Nickelodeon, and in this documentary, they both describe incredibly problematic sexist workplace environment problems because of their boss, Dan Schneider, who would regularly show them pornography on his computer screen while they were at work in the writer's room. He would regularly write adult jokes that specifically had sexual innuendo into the scripts of children's TV shows, starting with The Amanda Show. I had said all that before, but I think these women both started at The Amanda Show, starring Amanda Bynes, and then saw that escalate significantly into Drake and Josh and iCarly and all the other shows. But starting with The Amanda Show, with these women in the room, he would write adult sexual jokes into the script of a child's TV show, tell them nobody is supposed to know this is a sex joke, and if the network asks, I'll fire you if you tell them that it's a joke about sex. So they had to lie to their ultimate superiors numerous times in the process. At one point, the woman with the shorter hair was asked by Dan Schneider to tell a story about her time in high school while she was bent over a table. And I have to be careful about how I say this on the internet. I think we can probably just say it. We'll probably get demonetized for this video anyway. Was asked to recount a story from high school while being bent over the table and pretending to be sodomized because he thought that it would be funny. He thought that it would be a funny joke for everybody to laugh and react to. So forget about just the salaries and this idea that they didn't want to hire women to work on this show. Sure, that's really problematic, but like, is that really the end of the world big deal? Not to the degree that I think a lot of people expect from this series. And that clip covers 2% of what actually went on during these women's experience at Nickelodeon. It's disgusting. Like truly actual manifested sexism. And it's completely unacceptable. So that was happening at the staff level, behind the scenes in the writer room. But things started to really, really get bad at Nickelodeon for the other employees of the network as well when we start involving child actors. Dan really started his career at the network with this really fun show, All That, as I mentioned, that was the first like stand-up comedy show for kids that evolved into the Amanda Show, which the headline star for was Amanda Bynes, but there were several other kids that were like regularly in the rotation for most of the head talent on the show of the Amanda Show. Drake Bell being one of those kids before he got picked to star in Drake and Josh. They created a spinoff for him separately. One girl who starred as an extra, like background actress in the Amanda Show, had a horrifying situation with one of the producers on set. And this clip honestly infuriated me more than anything else that I watched as part of this series. I'm just going to let us watch it together. You guys can react in whatever way you see appropriate, and then I'll tell you what I think about it on the other side. But I hope you share my frustration.
About a week after she was on that episode, there was an email from Jason. She let me read it, and it was a very innocent email. It just talked about the shows that he'd been working on. After that, they were emailing more. She would tell me, oh, I got an email from Jason. He's doing this, he's doing that. I didn't see any harm in it. A couple months later, she was sitting at the computer, and all of a sudden I noticed she had suddenly shut down the computer completely and got up and ran into her bedroom and slammed the bedroom door shut. And I said, Brandy, what is wrong? She started to cry, and she said, I got an email from Jason.
For the record, Jason was one of the producers on the set of The Amanda Show. This is where this girl, Brandy, was working as a background actress. He was described in the documentary as very boy next door, very approachable, super friendly to all the kids. All the moms loved him. Nobody had even a second thought about the motives or intentions of this man. But should it not just like immediately make you feel a little weird that this mom is letting her child, her little girl, email back and forth with a grown-ass man? That alone made me feel weird, because this is exactly what I could have predicted.
It's a picture of him naked, masturbating. And he said he had sent it to her because he wanted her to see that he was thinking of her. I went back and forth with, should I call the police?
Yes!
They're gonna think I'm a bad parent because I allowed her to talk to this person. I struggle with this, and I finally told myself, I can't call the police. All I can do is make sure I keep her far away from him.
I can't call the police. I'm sorry. I'm not a parent yet. Someday, hopefully, I would love to be a parent. But in what world do you convince yourself not to call the police when your daughter is receiving photographic evidence of a pedophile working on a kids' television show network with dozens of other children who know and work with this man every day, because you think it's going to make you look like a bad parent? In what world do you not call the police? I told you this is the part that infuriated me more than anything else, so I'm trying really hard to give grace and just give the benefit of the doubt here. But in what world do you not call the police? Knowing that it's not just your daughter at risk, or that he could come back to hurt your daughter later on, even if you left the network and quit the show, but also knowing there are other kids at risk for this type of behavior. I cannot understand this mom's motives. If anybody is a parent, I can't. What parent does not report that? So it ends up being uncovered in the series that Jason Handy, this guy who sent this email, ended up being arrested for someone else calling the police to complain. Shocker that he was doing this to other kids too. Brandy, this beautiful young woman, ended up being a part of the investigation, and he was later convicted of child pornography and all kinds of other problems, sentenced to some time in prison. And that was that. But he was not even close to being the only child predator and pedophile working at Nickelodeon at the time. Probably the part of this documentary series that's getting the most attention from the media and from all of us on social media is the fact that Drake Bell, headline star of Drake and Josh, who's kind of been off the radar for a while in the entertainment industry. He lives in another country now. He's focusing much more on the music industry. There was some really crazy allegations against him that the media totally twisted and were not based in reality whatsoever a few years ago. So people have kind of like forgotten that he exists as of late. He has come back to the forefront of this conversation to, for the very first time in his life, publicly share his story of being brutally, disgustingly abused by individuals that he was supposed to trust at Nickelodeon during his time starring on both The Amanda Show and Drake and Josh. I can't show you the parts of the documentary on the stream that really need to be talked about. You guys need to go watch the series for yourself. But essentially, a line that really stuck with me in watching this series was Drake Bell being asked by the people making the documentary, by the interviewer, can you describe to us what this person did to you? And he said, no, I don't know how to say that on camera. I don't think I'm allowed to say that on television. Basically, picture the worst of the worst of the worst of what someone can do to another human being, especially an adult can do to a child, and there you have your answer for what this man did to me. And it is the worst of the worst of the worst. They expose all of it through this documentary. The man that was abusing Drake Bell throughout his experience working at Nickelodeon was a guy named Brian Peck, who was a very well-respected dialogue and acting coach inside of Hollywood, working with a lot of kids. He worked significantly with Leonardo DiCaprio throughout his child stardom in Hollywood and ended up getting hired by Nickelodeon to work on The Amanda Show to help these kids work through different voices and dialogues. It was kind of like a sketch show, sort of like an SNL. And so these kids got to play a whole host of different characters on screen every day and therefore needed to learn how to do a whole lot of voices and play a whole lot of different characters. Brian took a really significant interest in Drake Bell early on during his time on the network and decided to offer private acting coaching at his home while Drake was still being managed by his dad. Drake's parents ended up going through a really interesting, horrible divorce, and it was back and forth who was going to be Drake's manager as his parent while he was a child working in the industry. While his dad was his manager, nothing happened with this individual, Brian Peck, to abuse Drake Bell. But as soon as his dad was out of the picture and mom started managing Drake's career, that's when everything began to go downhill. But even when Drake's dad was still managing his career, he immediately picked up on extremely problematic behaviors happening to Drake and to other kids at the hands of this complete monster.
You hear scuttlebutt about the business and what you got to watch your kids and this and that. So I was very attentive. All the other parents would be seen and not heard, which I would never interrupt anything, but very rarely sat in the green room. I'd always be offset somewhere where I could always keep my eyes on Drake.
The fact that he was the only parent to do that also is completely pathetic to me. Every other parent just said, bye kids, have fun, see you never. I'll hang out in this room where I can't see you and you're working with all of these adults that I don't know. Kudos to this dad.
And unfortunately, I started seeing Brian start to just hang around Drake too much. And it didn't set well with me. Drake would be in the dressing room or something, and in would pop Brian and just touch Drake. you know, do things that, wait a second, what are you doing? Drake can put that on himself. And the thing is, this is in front of people. Then he'd maybe walk over to Drake and be feeding him some lines or whatever and put his arm around his waist, put his hand up on his shoulder and kind of run it down his arm and things like that. And this would happen routinely. Was just always uncomfortable.
This is John.
This would happen routinely and was just always uncomfortable. So immediately, Dad says something is wrong here. As we know, Dad ended up not managing Drake's career after a time. His mom took over, and Drake began spending the night at his acting coach's house, at Brian Peck's house. He began spending almost all of his time after days on set with Brian to practice for other auditions and work through different coaching opportunities to be ready for movies that he could be cast in or all kinds of other opportunities. And Drake really painfully during this interview recounts waking up in the middle of the night at his acting coach's house and the journey over several months to years of being abused sexually by this man beginning. Like I said, we can't really talk on the stream because of like community guidelines issues of every single thing that happened to Drake Bell at the hands of this complete pedophilic monster. I think we'll get in trouble. But you guys should watch it. And it truly is, in Drake's own words, the worst of the worst of the worst things you can possibly imagine a grown adult doing to a child. So he keeps it a secret for a really long time because he doesn't want to get in trouble. He doesn't want to lose his job. He doesn't want to lose other opportunities because he's being told by this man who's abusing him, I will destroy your career if any of this ever comes out. You will never work again. And Drake's basically financially responsible, at least in part, for his family at this point, which is a really common theme for a lot of these kids. But eventually it kind of just all comes tumbling out. He couldn't keep it in anymore. He had to recount every single thing that happened to him to the police. Because he was a minor, his name was sealed in all of the court documents, but Brian Peck gets arrested for a whole host of charges of sexual abuse against a minor. Go look it up for yourself. Again, I don't really want to push the boundaries too much with community guidelines here on the stream today. And on the day that Drake had to go to court for Brian's sentencing, something that makes your stomach turn ended up happening. Check this out.
It was a different time, so I think it was a little easier to go to and from a courthouse and not worry about Twitter that night or TMZ paparazzis being there. On the day of sentencing for Brian, I get to the courthouse. It was the most unbelievable thing I'd ever seen. His entire side of the courtroom was full. Full. There were definitely some recognizable faces on that side of the room. And my side was me, my mom, and my brother.
In other words, his entire side of the courtroom for a man being arrested for all kinds of disgusting acts of literal pedophilia was full. Completely full. He'd received dozens of letters to the judge on his behalf to testify to his character and that if anything bad had happened, it wasn't Brian's fault. He was tempted beyond belief by a child who worked for him. So talk about a disgusting power imbalance. And very high up influential figures in Hollywood from across the industry sat in that courtroom in defense of what was about to be a convicted pedophile. Welcome to Hollywood.
Brian had been convicted, but getting all of this support from a lot of people in the industry, and yeah, I was pretty shocked. My mom got up, she had a statement. I wasn't going to address Brian. There was no reason to. I addressed my statement to everyone in the room. I looked at all of them, And I just said, how dare you? And I said, you will forever have the memory of sitting in this courtroom and defending this person. And I will forever have the memory of the person you're defending violating me and doing unspeakable acts and crimes.
I'm like literally about to cry all over again. It's only the second time I've watched
and that's what
this.
I'll remember.
I will forever have the memory of the person you're defending violating me, doing unspeakable things to me. And there you are, defending him in public, in the open, after you know this individual was a convicted child sex offender. But that's Hollywood. I told you guys at the beginning of the stream, watching this series really shattered my image of Nickelodeon as someone who watched the network growing up. Again, I was much more of a Disney Channel fan than I was a Nickelodeon fan, but I certainly watched several Nickelodeon series pretty regularly, pretty religiously. iCarly especially, which was one of Dan Schneider's biggest hits, arguably his most successful show on the network. And I don't think I could ever go back and rewatch those shows the same way today. They just did a reboot of iCarly, and I was thinking about watching it because it's on right now, and I loved iCarly, and I don't think I could watch it the same way again. Because other than the content of the series itself, which is horrifying, and you need to go watch it yourself. Again, the series is called Quiet on Set. I streamed it on HBO Max. I think you can also watch it on Amazon Prime, and I'm pretty sure somebody said you can watch it on YouTube as well. Quiet on Set, 4-part documentary series. The content of the series itself is the most jarring thing I've ever seen. Uncovering abuse of people like Amanda Bynes, Drake Bell, and several other people who starred on the network. But really what's been more uncomfortable for me in the last several days is watching so many people on the internet now do a deeper dive and go back to some of the more subtle imagery and covert innuendo that existed on all of these shows that we loved as a kid, that were literally right in front of our face the entire time, and we couldn't necessarily pick up on it through the perspective and lens of childlike innocence. It blows my mind, to be honest with you, how many overtly sexualized jokes exist on kids' TV shows that we wouldn't have thought about if you're watching this show at 10 or 11 or 12 or even 13 years old. But that joke is for somebody. If there's sex jokes in the script of a kid's TV show, and it's not for a kid, if that joke is not intended for a child, who is that joke intended for? It's intended for somebody. So I started thinking about this at the larger 30,000 foot level. And I had forgotten this. You guys might have forgotten this as well. But quite literally, for a span of a few years there during our childhood, I didn't remember this. The actual logo of Nickelodeon as a network was a foot. Was a foot. A human foot. And Quiet on Set, the documentary series, reminded me that Dan Schneider had this weird obsession with feet, and there were regularly very bizarre feet fetish-related innuendos in almost every single one of the series that he was responsible for producing during his time on the network at Nickelodeon. You guys, I didn't remember this, certainly at all, but did you remember there were actually contests at Nickelodeon when we were kids to take pictures of your feet and send them as children to somebody at the network at Nickelodeon? And it was like some entry for a drawing to win something. I had forgotten about this, but a ton of people have been commenting on my videos saying that they have sent pictures of their own feet as children into Nickelodeon as part of these like giveaway contests for iCarly, and one other show did it as well. Chat, let me know if you guys participated in that. I had totally forgotten that that had happened when we were kids, but is a very real thing. There is a bank of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of children's feet pictures somewhere, probably owned by this guy, Dan Schneider, from viewers of the show, not just cast members watching the show. Ivana says, I did that too, LMFAO. So, I mean, so many people thought about this as a childlike giveaway contest thing, something funny or gross. But this was a real thing, a very real thing that thousands upon thousands of kids my age participated in. And now their feet pictures are literally everywhere. Inside of the shows, the feet-related content that I had completely forgotten about, I watch now as an adult, and it's some of the most uncomfortable stuff that I've ever seen. For copyright purposes, I'm not going to play the audio on this, but if you guys remember the show Victorious, super, super cute show starring Victoria Justice. She got her start on Zoe 101, and then they ended up making this cool show about a performing arts high school and all the stuff that these kids went through every day. This is from literally one children's TV show, different various deleted scenes, completely different episodes scattered throughout the show of various scenes involving children's feet from one show on the network at Nickelodeon. This is just from Victorious. And there are countless other instances of feet scenes being shown on Drake and Josh, being shown on iCarly. And it's not even just the kids doing weird crap with their feet together as kids. There are also numerous scenes right here, for example, in this show on Victorious, of adults touching, rubbing, etc., children's feet. These are minors starring in this show. And I watch this now as an adult, and I think no part of this is funny. Like, no part of this is remotely silly to me. Or yucky or like slapstick gross comedy that's easily accessible for kids. This is gross. It's gross is what it is. It's a foot fetish. And if those jokes aren't intended for kids and the innuendo of a foot fetish isn't intended for kids, then who are those jokes intended for? But then there were also deleted scenes I completely forgotten about since childhood that didn't air on television. They were like special web extras from some of these series. Victorious, I think they were able to push the envelope farther than any other show in terms of the content that they were creating. But I had forgotten about this. Dan Schneider created like a special web series for Victorious that only existed on the internet. It didn't exist or air on television. I can't show you all of this actually because I really don't want us to get in trouble with community guidelines, but this is still on the internet. Ariana Grande, as a teenager, as a minor, working on the set of Victorious, creating this web-based content called The Slap for Dan Schneider for Victorious as a web extra for the show. I watch this now as an adult, and it honestly feels like watching a child pornography shoot is what it looks like. I can't see any other comparison than that. It is that uncomfortable. And if this content wasn't appropriate enough to air on TV, it could only be posted on the internet. Who is the intended audience for this content? This is a 2-minute video. I'm only going to show you 2 very small segments, but watch this.
Have you ever tried to get your whole big toe in your mouth? Check this out.
There's the foot scene. I'm not going to show you the potato, but you know what I'm talking about if you've been scrolling through TikTok the last several days. And then there's this.
I'm thirsty. It's not possible.
Tell me that is anything other than sexual content. I'll wait. She was a teenager, a minor in all of these videos. I don't know her exact age on this. I'd actually be really curious to know. If anybody does know, tell us in the chat. She was a kid, being told she had to do this for her job by her producer, Dan Schneider, knowing it was too inappropriate to air this on television, and it certainly was too inappropriate just for the kids' audience on television, so it was treated as a web extra for anyone to watch on the internet. And we wonder why so many of these kids have issues now as grown-ups. She was a kid. I even think about some of the stuff in like what was the show about the dares? Was it Double Dare on Nickelodeon? One of the people interviewed in the Quiet on Set series talks about having to do a dare on Double Dare where he was covered in peanut butter. His whole body was covered in peanut butter, and they made him lay down on the stage, and all of the peanut butter was licked off by like 12 dogs. And how wildly uncomfortable that was, and completely unnecessary, and frankly fetishy. Double Dare 2000. Thank you. I'm glad you guys reminded me of that because I forgot how weirdly fetishy and innuendo based that dare actually was. I can't unsee it. Even something as seemingly innocent as this, I can't unsee it. How did none of us say anything about this? How did none of our parents say anything about this is my question. Because like as kids, you think, oh, that's stupid. Feet are gross. Ha ha ha. LOL. But our parents watched us watch Nickelodeon. How did nobody pick up on all of that? I don't know if I had kids right now, I would ever let them watch any of those shows. Because I can't unsee it now, watching with an adult perspective and through an adult lens, rather than what I used to think about these shows as a kid. It's disgusting. Maybe other than Drake Bell, the biggest thing that this series resurrected and brought back into the national conversation about how kids are treated in the entertainment industry is the story of Amanda Bynes. Full disclosure, I used to be obsessed with Amanda Bynes. I thought she was so talented, ridiculously beautiful, like maybe the most beautiful actress of that generation and that era on both child TV and later on in all of the movies and more adult content that she starred in when she grew up. She is truly a one of one. And when she was a little kid, was kind of like the Shirley Temple of the millennial generation. I love Amanda Bynes. And early on, she was discovered, so to speak, at a comedy camp, a child's comedy camp, by none other than Dan Schneider himself, and was handpicked to star on the first ever kids sketch-based comedy show, All That. Ended up getting her own show on the series called The Amanda Show. And as we know, her career just completely exploded from that. Most of us probably remember her from She's the Man or What a Girl Wants. Great movies in their own respect, both of them. Now I really want to watch She's the Man. And if you haven't been paying attention, Amanda has kind of dropped off the face of the earth the last several years for various different reasons. A lot of people have their speculation as to what happened, but there's a lot resurfacing right now as to how she was treated as a child, a lot of the speculative abuse that happened to her at the hands of Dan Schneider and her parents alike, things that have never been uncovered publicly, but certainly were talked about at length in this Quiet on Set documentary series, including all of her other co-stars from All That and The Amanda Show saying that sometimes for hours and hours and hours on end every day when the kids were supposed to be doing their schoolwork at school on set, Amanda and Dan would just disappear for hours, just the two of them. Nobody knew where they were. They had an extremely close, very touchy physical relationship when she was a little kid, 11, 12, 13 years old. And people are resurfacing clips of Amanda being interviewed on late night television shows. So it's not just Dan that was treating her so disgustingly and pervertedly, but pretty much the entire entertainment industry at large. And now, thinking about what we've talked about for the last odd hour of this live stream, I want you to watch these clips of Amanda being interviewed on The Howie Mandel Show, on Conan O'Brien, on several different late night TV shows, and think about how messed up it is that the entertainment industry and the media was talking to a kid, a child, a teenager this way. This is Amanda at 12 years old in 1999, starring on All That, being interviewed on The Howie Mandel Show. 12 years old. She's still incredibly bubbly, super full of life, very, very fun. But what are the first things that these late night television show hosts want to ask her? Her dating life. Who are you dating? Do you have a boyfriend? Who are you making out with at 12 years old? Look how young she is in this video.
Well, I don't know if she would let her, but it's kind of nice that my dad says no, so your dad says no.
Do you want to date yet? Do you have a boyfriend?
No, I don't. I go, well, when I'm going to real school, I go to an all-girls school, so it's kind of hard to have a boyfriend.
Right.
But I do like boys that are like in movies. Like I like Ryan Felipe, even though Ryan Felipe.
Ryan Felipe.
He was in 54. He was in
Whoa, who doesn't know Ryan Felipe?
Yeah, who doesn't? Do anybody know? He's really cute. But he's like getting married to Reese Witherspoon, so you don't have to meet him before they get married.
Right.
Break them apart.
Now you started out the same way I did. I understand that you started out at the Laugh Factory. Are you a stand-up comedian?
Yeah. Well, my dad saw an article that kids could do a comedy camp at the Laugh Factory.
Right.
So it was for 6 weeks or something. Arsenio Hall came on and he would critique your act.
Right.
And Richard Pryor came on.
Wow.
So that was really cool. He was so neat. It was so cool. I was like, wow, it was so neat to meet him. And then a few other people came on.
Right.
Yes.
She's so cute.
Oh yeah, this chair is kind of.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah. And so it was really cool, and then there was a graduation night, and that's where the producers of the show, like Brian Robbins and Dan Schneider, came on the show, and they saw me there. So
and that was cool. It. You just got.
And that's how she got discovered by Dan Schneider. But again, what was one of the first questions that this grown man wanted to ask a 12-year-old little girl on her first big break in Hollywood? Do you have a boyfriend? Do you have a boyfriend? What do you think about older men and this Hollywood star? By the time Amanda was 15, she got an interview with Craig Ferguson. She was doing all different acting work at this point in time. She is 15 years old in this interview. I don't even know how to preface it other than that.
This jacket when I was 15 when I did Big Fat Liar.
Yeah.
I guess she was 16 maybe in this video, so she got it a year before.
Liar, you're very good in that. Yeah. Frankie Muniz is in that.
True.
Yeah. I like him. Yeah, he's good.
Yeah. So anyway, can't really dance because it's kind of.
I'm guessing they pay you in that WB. Get a new jacket.
I know. I really should get a new jacket.
15 to 18, you're going to grow up. You're going to fill out. You're going to become a woman. You don't want to be. Yeah.
I should take it off.
No.
But no. Like that. I just mean, but I'm gonna keep it on.
Yeah, I think that's right. Keep it on until you're 21. Come back, take it off.
Maybe I'll take it.
Yeah.
Between 15 and 18, you're gonna fill out. You're gonna become a woman, and then when you turn 21, come back on the show and strip for us. Ha 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 ha. What part of that is funny? I don't know if I'm just being oversensitive to this, but genuinely, what part of that is funny? It's disgusting. Here's Amanda in 2005 on Conan O'Brien. I think she was 17, 16, late 16, early 17 in this clip. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this was September of 2005. On Conan O'Brien, one of the highest rated shows in late night TV. Listen to her very subtle cry for help here and how the audience responds to her. Not to mention the media industry at large.
One thing I've noticed is as
you get older, like a lot of my friends, you know, are always sort of like the slutty stewardess or slutty nurse. And it's just so interesting. And people are clapping. They're like, that's great.
Let me explain what kind of crowds we get here. Some people act all slutty on Halloween.
No, but it's so interesting how when you're a kid, you're sort of always like the Girl Scout or, you know, whatever.
Right.
And as you get older, everybody sort of wants to instantly slut it up.
Right.
And it's sort of nice to actually go as something sort of funny or whatever. I don't know, but do you have any tips?
I never went out as a slutty. Well, I was one year.
Good.
One year I was the naughty librarian. I got a lot of candy that year. Now, you're living in your own apartment now.
Yeah.
Wouldn't even address it. Wouldn't even address it. As she basically has a public cry for help on late night TV, knowing that there's going to be a lot of people watching at this time, saying, as a kid, you get to be a kid. You get to play the Girl Scout. You get to play the soccer player. You get to play whatever. And the minute you become a teenager, everyone wants you to be the slutty nurse, the slutty character who sleeps around with everybody. She literally asked Conan O'Brien, do you have any tips? Like, help me. Somebody help me. And instead of getting help, the audience is clapping. Yes, Amanda, please be the slutty character. We're begging you. At 16, 17 years old. I can't unsee stuff like this that's now going incredibly viral for a new period of time this week. And I had forgotten this. Maybe I was too young as a Gen Zer at the time, but I didn't realize this. Years and years and years ago, Amanda Bynes was rumored to have this secret Twitter account called Ashley Banks. You guys who might be millennials might remember this, but she had this secret Twitter account in 2017. At this time, she'd been put under a conservatorship by her parents in a really similar way that Britney Spears has been put under conservatorship by her parents. So like they control all of her decisions, all of her finances, all of her medical choices, all of the above. And she was basically creating a new cry for help using this name Ashley Banks, but she posted a photo, a picture of her driver's license to prove that it was her in 2017 to say, it's me. This is actually me. Please, somebody listen to me. That they've used me and my talent and all of this stuff to make millions and millions of dollars off of me. Who they is, I'm assuming, is her parents and maybe her producers like Dan Schneider, begging people to start paying attention to this. Evie Magazine just posted an article about it. So if you want to go read all of the tweets from this now resurfaced Twitter account, Evie Magazine covered this and published it on Tuesday, March 19th. But one that really stands out to me more than anything else is this. In 2017, Ashley Banks / Amanda Bynes on her secret Twitter account tweeted, can you imagine having an abortion at 13 years old because your boss impregnated you? Allegedly, her boss being Dan Schneider. Or committed because your father touched you. Committed meaning being put under a conservatorship and being told she was crazy, mentally insane, and unable to run her own life. And her parents knew better, even though they were the ones potentially, allegedly, abusing her this entire time. This was also before my time on Nickelodeon, but they even made a joke about this on the air. There's a scene from the Amanda show when Amanda was 13 years old, allegedly when this supposed abortion from being impregnated from her boss happened against her will. She was 13, and this joke that happened on the Amanda show featured a scene with a baby and the mention of an empty stomach, suggestively alluding to an abortion. There's a video going very viral about this scene, referencing a baby. The caption on the video reads, "The reference to a baby in this scene, given what she details on her Twitter account, is disturbing. It's so sickening that they did this to her and no adults stopped it." Not only did they not stop it, if this did in fact happen, they made a joke about it on her TV show bearing her name. they made people laugh about it. At 13 years old. Remember, this clip of Amanda that we just watched is when she was 12. So barely older than this. And as soon as she starts going into her later teenage years, you just saw the life drain from her eyes in all of those interview clips. She's literally crying out for help. Please, somebody help me. I need tips as to not be cast as the slutty person or be treated as the slutty person. This is so messed up. And instead, TV show hosts asked her to strip on national television when she was 21 years old. So, it's no wonder to me that now Amanda Bynes doesn't look like the beautiful Amanda Bynes that we have known and expected her to always look like. Today, Amanda Bynes looks like this. She's been arrested several times for drug use. She's been in and out of rehab. She doesn't have any opportunity to run her own social media. She's still under conservatorship from her parents, meaning they control every single aspect of her life. That is that beautiful little girl, full of life and spunk and energy and joy that we just watched countless clips of. And every other star that is featured in this Quiet on Set documentary vividly describes being really jealous of Amanda and how close she was with Dan as kids and how her career was taking off while everybody else's was kind of just going off to the side. That's Amanda Bynes now. Obviously, she didn't participate in the series, in the documentary series, because she couldn't. I mean, she's literally not treated as a sane human being in society today by the media industry, Hollywood, or her parents. But there's a lot of speculation as to the fact that Dan Schneider felt so bold to come out immediately after this documentary was released and do a podcast episode saying they all took this totally out of context. Nobody knows what they're talking about. This was all a big misunderstanding. I never did anything wrong. I would do some things different now. Probably because the one person alive today who could genuinely lock this man up in prison is looked at as crazy, is treated as an insane person, and has been committed into the care of her parents. Allegedly, I should say. I told you that this wasn't going to be good. If you wanted to look at Nickelodeon in any sort of semblance of the way you used to look at it as a child, don't watch this documentary. But I think that it is important to watch it, because if you think this is isolated to one producer at one network and the rampant emotional, physical, and sexual abuse that happened to countless children starring on this network, your head is so far up your own ass, I don't even know how to point you in the right direction. I, since making a short form video about this that I posted on Instagram yesterday, I've had countless people comment on my video saying that they used to work at Nickelodeon, that they were a writer there, da-da-da-da. There was one comment that really was jarring to me. They said, I used to be a writer at Nickelodeon, so I'm not surprised by any of the information that's now being uncovered by this docuseries. I quit Nickelodeon because it was so bad, and I went after the fact to go work for Disney. And let me tell you, Disney, in this person's experience, was 100,000 times worse. So then they ended up having to leave Disney and go work on some other projects in New York City. But don't think that this is isolated to one producer at one network in Nickelodeon for how children are being exploited in the process. In fact, this far predates even the millennial generation. I didn't know this until this week somehow. I'm sure people older than me remember this. But apparently Brooke Shields was in Playboy, a spinoff of Playboy magazine, posing completely nude at 10 years old. 10. Because her mother forced her to do it, and later on, as an adult, she petitioned the court to try to get ownership of those photos and get them taken down. And the court system in Hollywood said she doesn't own the rights to her own photos at 10 years old, completely naked in Playboy. So this far predates Gen Z. It far predates the millennials that are now coming forward and being interviewed for this series. This far predates the existence of Nickelodeon as a network. There is a much larger pedophile problem in Hollywood that immediately needs to be addressed. And to answer everybody's question for popping up in the live chat over the last several minutes, where is Dan Schneider now? Where are all of these people now? Dan was let go by Nickelodeon a couple of years ago. They agreed to part ways, aka he was finally fired from the network because a bunch of women decided to sue and it became a whole thing, lots of investigations. But remember the guy Brian Peck who raped Drake Bell and abused him in several other instances? After that sentencing hearing, where half the courtroom was completely full to support a convicted child molester, that man only received 16 months in prison, just over a year, and immediately after his release was hired by Disney Channel to go work for The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. I think there are many, many, many more documentaries to come. And there's a lot of content resurfacing on social media this week from people like Demi Lovato, from other people who've been trying to speak out about their experience on Disney Channel. Both of the twins that starred on Sweet Life of Zack and Cody kind of left the acting world for a very long time. One of them ended up going back, one of the Sprouse brothers, and he does some tangential acting now. But after growing up in the industry, they wanted nothing to do with it the minute they turned 18. I was reminded this week that the Olsen twins literally had a countdown clock to the minute their 18th birthday happened so that they wouldn't have to continue acting anymore. This is a massive, massive undercover network specifically aimed at exploiting children. And there's a reason it's been attacked in the last year and a half or so, with movies like Sound of Freedom hitting theaters and being wildly successful as a radical right-wing QAnon conspiracy theory. I'm actually shocked, to be honest with you, that Quiet on Set has received the acclamation that it has and the incredibly high viewership that it has over the last several days, and not instantly having been attacked a radical right-wing QAnon conspiracy theory. Instead, people seem to be taking this at face value, which is a good thing. So watch it, share this stream with other people. Start waking up to the reality that not only was Nickelodeon grooming these kids and abusing these kids, but they were also, to some degree, grooming us to make us watch this stuff that was overt sexual innuendo content. We couldn't realize that through the lens of our childlike innocence, but our parents could have, to make us realize or think something like this is normal, that there's nothing weird about it, that you shouldn't feel uncomfortable watching something like that. That was 100% intentional. But the easiest way we can continue exposing this stuff is by strength in numbers. So, as you guys have asked repeatedly, where can I watch this thing? I highly recommend that you do, because it completely changed how I view that one particular network and kids being involved in the entertainment industry at large, the need for further protection of these children. You guys might remember Allison Stoner. She was a child actress on Disney Channel, and she also was Sarah Baker in the Cheaper by the Dozen movies. She's awesome. I really, really like her. She has made it her life's mission now to create legislation and get it passed all over the country to protect child actors against a lot of the insanity that's happening behind the scenes right now. Go research the stuff she's working on. Watch this documentary. Share these videos when you see them on social media. We have got to speak up for kids now that there is a very brief window of opportunity where all of this ugly truth is coming to light. Because if you think this just happened to a small handful of them, I beg you to think again. Quiet on Set can be watched on HBO Max. That's where I streamed it, all 4 episodes. I just binge watched right through. I was bawling my eyes out on an airplane. Super embarrassing if any of you guys saw me in that experience. I think you can also watch it and download it on Amazon Prime. And somebody said that they found it on YouTube, but I'm not incredibly sure where they were able to find it on YouTube. So if any of you guys know, drop it in the chat real quick. Before we go, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to our amazing headline sponsor and friends over at Public Square for helping to make this live stream possible. If you guys own a small business of any kind, you sell t-shirts, you sell coffee, you help people plan vacations or do their taxes, whatever it is, your business needs to be listed on Public Square, where there are tens of thousands of small businesses across America exploding in revenue and opportunities to share their business, because it is the biggest pro-freedom, pro-family, pro-faith platform for businesses we know we can trust to share our values. If you guys are looking for different companies to go support because you want to intentionally support companies that share your values, look no further than Public Square. They are the place to be. Also, I want to thank you guys one more time for everything you're doing to help get my book, The End of the Alphabet, to the top of the bestseller charts. We have had an incredible week of book launch and are charting very, very high on Amazon. And all of that is because of you. Within a matter of like 12 hours, we became the #1 bestseller in our categories for my book, which I'm super, super excited about. But that's not the only bestseller list that we're trying to hit. So if you guys have not already picked up a copy of my book, The End of the Alphabet, How Gen Z Can Save America, hiding right behind me right here on my little shelf, I'm dropping the link for where you guys can go pick up your own copy and hopefully bring it to one of our stops on the book tour as I'm traveling the country over the next couple of weeks to meet all of you guys in real life. I can't drop links on Instagram, but Instagram, you guys can go to the link in my bio to go pick up your own copy. Please, please, please go consider picking it up. We also have it on Audible. I am the reader of the audiobook, so if you like listening to my voice, I hate it. You can download the audiobook version. It is called The End of the Alphabet, How Gen Z Can Save America. Let's keep hitting bestseller lists and proving everybody wrong about who Gen Z is and how we're going to change the country and world for the better. I love you guys so very much. I hope you have a wonderful Friday night, and we'll be back for the stream for a fun special weekend edition here. Oh, my phone is ringing. Wow, that was surprising from a random 800 number. I'm just so popular, you guys. We'll be back for a fun weekend edition of the stream this weekend as well. Details to come this afternoon. Before you go, don't forget, smash that follow or subscribe button no matter where you guys are watching to help us continue growing the channels one day at a time. Love you guys so much. We will see you over the weekend.